Call to order. This meeting is held in the council chambers, which are open for public attendance and participation. The meeting will also be live streamed for public viewing, but not participation at the link identified in the agenda. Emailed comments sent and received by the city clerk at least 24 hours before the meeting were distributed to the city council prior to the meeting. Can I have roll call, please?
Mayor Kirchner.
Present.
Vice Mayor Harris. Here. Councilmember Boomgarden.
Here.
Councilmember Pasquale.
Here.
Councilmember Shaw.
Here.
City Attorney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We have one item for closed session this evening. It's conference with legal counsel existing litigation per Government Code Section 54956.9, Diana Barrett versus City of Yuba City et al. Superior Court Case Number CVCS 20-000-1102, Court of Appeal C09-7139. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public? Seeing none, we will go ahead and adjourn to closed session. Okay, call to order. Welcome. This meeting is being held in the council chambers, which are open for public attendance and participation. The meeting will also be live streamed for public viewing, but not participation at the link identified in the agenda. Email comments sent and received by the city clerk at least 24 hours before the meeting were distributed to the city council prior to the meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Mayor Kirchner.
Present.
Vice Mayor Harris. Councilmember Boomgarden.
Here.
Councilmember Pasquale.
Here.
Councilmember Shaw.
Here.
Thank you for that. Right now, we are going to have the invocation by Councilmember Shaw, and we will stay standing, and the pledge will be done by Brad McIntyre. So please stand.
Before we go to prayer tonight, many of you have seen the media headlines in the last, matter of fact, just the last couple of days. And in honor of those that we have lost in our community through sickness and normal causes, in our community region-wide, we've lost others due to tragedy. And I'd just like for us to pause and have a moment of silence in reverence for all those who have suffered a loss in the last week. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for who you are, because you are God and we are not. Father, we just ask you right now to embrace our community, bring comfort to those that need it because of tragedies that's happened in the past week or so. Father, we pray for those overseas who are suffering from the tragedy of the earthquake, that you would be with them. And Father, above all, it's good to know what's right and wrong, but it's incredible to have the wisdom to know when to act. And Father, I pray that you will give this council the wisdom that we need to make the decisions for the city that will propel it into the future, and that we can give you all the glory and honor and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, City Attorney's report on closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was no reportable action taken in closed session.
All right, thank you. Agenda modifications, approval of agenda. Staff is recommending that item 5, Henson Ranch and Estates, be continued to a future meeting. Ceremonial presentations. Number 1 is Mayor's Pin presentation.
If I could have our current mayor and former Mayor Boomgarden and former Mayor Harris come down to the front. This is something new that has recently started in the last couple of years. You probably noticed that the council has these different pins. And we wanted to do something that marked the time that we serve our community on the council. And these were designed by the last council. And these are all hand custom made. That's why it wasn't just available a couple of months ago. But the only difference between the pins is if you ever get the title of mayor, you do get a little stone in it that just signifies that you did serve as the mayor and the chair. So with that, on behalf of your two former mayors here and myself, we want to welcome you to being a mayor and give you your official pin. Please wear it with honor. Please, let that be a constant reminder of what it means to sit in that chair as far as what we're doing for the city. So would either of you gentlemen like to say anything?
It is an honor to be able to present this. It is a change from a lot, but it's the beginning of another tradition. And I think all of us are proud to be able to honor you tonight with that tradition.
Here. Welcome, Wade, and congratulations on that. We have many very busy months ahead of us. I'm sure you're going to do great. And hopefully this tradition will carry on, well, forever, in perpetuity. So welcome. Thank you.
Wow. So thank you to the council. Thank you, Councilman Shaw. So it's official now. So this is great, and I couldn't work with a better group of people or for a better group of people. So thank you very much.
And just so you know, let's give him a hand. Oh, we need a picture. You gotta hold it up. You're gonna have to really zoom in. And just before I sit down, we have not forgotten about our new council member. As I said, these are custom made and they take about 4 months to make. So we'll be presenting yours in the near future, my friend.
Thank you for that. All right, public communication, number 2, appearance of interested citizens. You are welcomed and encouraged to participate in this meeting. Public comment is taken on action items appearing on the consent calendar or business items on the agenda when they are called. Public comment on any other items within the scope of the city's jurisdiction, including items not listed on the agenda, will be considered at this time. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Members of the public submitting written requests at least 24 hours prior to the meeting will be allotted 5 minutes to comment per speaker. Repetitive comments may be limited, and large groups are encouraged to select representatives to express the opinions of the group. And we do have a speaker card for Heather Essman.
Good evening. Heather Essman. I live on Lincoln Road, not by Sanborn, but it's within the Yuba City limits. First of all, I wanted to thank Vice Mayor and Mayor for attending a meeting and holding a meeting last week at the Moose Lodge for the new project, the Senior Citizens project that Habitat for Humanity is proposing. There was a lot of back and forth, and I must tell you that Diana and I don't know what the gentleman's name is from Habitat for Humanity, you did an excellent job representing the city and actually explaining the situation, because it was very clear to me that the city has a legal obligation in certain instances, and to not follow that would be not only financially a problem for the city if we were to be penalized for not following through on some of this, but it also helps because that area right there is just completely empty. It's I think of an empty lot as blight. I'm sorry. And there's just a lot of empty lot right around that area. So anytime that we can get something in there, particularly for seniors and particularly for helping with affordable housing is great. I'm also speaking for Karen, who is the lady that was sitting next to me, who is applying for my studio, just so that you guys know. She's actually at the top of the list, but we'll see if we can get the financing going. She said, and she wanted me to make sure that that seniors deserve a safe place too, is what she told me. She wanted to make sure that that communication came over because she is living in an RV right now. And she is one of those people that she couldn't be here tonight because she volunteers for our community. And she saw that that was just as important as coming here and displaying this message to you. So I wanted to make sure that you got that. She's a longtime resident, so there's no reason why she can't be favored over maybe, let's just say, some boisterous people in the background that really didn't represent the lodge very well. I'm sorry, I got a really bad, well, anyways. And for the consent, number 14, thank you very much. Parks and Rec, really, they seem to be the last one to get anything, and I do appreciate that they're able to get some new equipment and some new trucks because the guys really deserve. They do a lot of stuff. They're out there all the time. They're taking care of the trees in the parks and everything else. It doesn't matter if it's raining, doesn't matter if it's windy, it could be freezing outside. They're still out there at 6:30 in the morning getting work done. So I really appreciate you guys hopefully proving that then when it comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Any other comments? Okay, then moving right along, consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and can be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the meeting that council votes on the motion unless members of the city council request specific items to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for individual actions. Do we have any comments from the public on consent calendar items 3 through 4 and 6 through 14, excluding item 5? Any public comments? Any public comments? And I'll go ahead and bring it back to council for action.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Just wanted to note for the record that there was one written comment that was received for agenda item 11, which is in your packet and has been presented. Thank you.
Okay. That doesn't need to be read at this time, does it? Okay. So I'll bring it back to council for action.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Move to approve consent items 3 through 14, except item 5.
I have a motion from Councilmember Shaw. Do I have a second? And a second from Councilmember Pasquale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Okay, moving to business items. Number 15, Utility Rate Study 2024, presented by Ben Moody, Development Services and Public Works Director.
All right. So good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. So the item before you is in regards to the consideration of awarding a consultant contract to initiate a Utilities Rate Study 2024. And so to kick things off, I definitely want to compliment our analyst, Scarlett Harris, and our Deputy Director, Phil Marler from our Utilities branch that's really put this together and brought it forward. And this, as I work through it, there'll be a basis, but this is really is going to be a big effort, a big push over the next year to really bring things together. And so we call that out. And then my understanding, a rep from Black and Veatch might also be on, and Bowie, who could provide some questions or provide some insight at the end of the discussion if needed. So to work through this, high level, the utilities infrastructure and operations. And so just high level, here's some aerials. On the left, we have our water treatment plant. Capacity, it can produce 36 MGD. At the water treatment plant, we have 280 miles of distribution lines across the city, 6 storage tanks, and with an annual budget of around $16.5 million this year. At the wastewater plant, we're permitted up to 10.5 million gallons. per day for treated effluent to go out to the river. About 170 miles of collection mains throughout the city, 17 lift stations with approximately $19 million in annual operations. This is just an infographic. You know, we were kind of coining phrases, but it's bank to bank. It comes in on the north through the levee, and it goes out on the south across the levee. And so, but what we have is we're servicing over 19,000 water connections and 15,000 sewer connections in the city. And with that, besides the treatment plants and water distribution, there's also utilities admin, the environmental compliance, the laboratory, and customer service, and how that circles around. So why are we here tonight? And so it's really issues and expectations facing utilities and to operate, make sure our operations are in good standing. And so looking where we're at and really understanding our rate structure and where that is and stuff coming down the pipe. So we have a lot of stuff on the horizon with increased costs for materials, services, and supplies, underfunded capital improvements and maintenance needs that are ever increasing. There's constantly new regulatory requirements regarding permit requirements, the diffuser projects, new digesters, just maintenance. It's a harsh environment with chemicals and the maintenance on these and the age. And then you throw in drought conditions, water conservation, new water contracts. It all plays into this dynamic that we need to constantly monitor our utility, our rate structure, and how we're programming and funding the utilities to make sure they're solvent. So why a rate study? So a rate study, water and weight studies are self-funded. So it's through our enterprise budget in the city's annual budget. The funds are allocated separately. So they're enterprise fund where there's not mixing. Every dollar is accounted for that comes in from the ratepayer and how that gets allocated. Rates are intended to recuperate costs for the delivery of service and operations of infrastructure. The rate structures the customers across all customer classes. So when we're talking about this, it's looking at how we're going to reanalyze how we look at some of the rate structures, because there's a lot on flat rates for residential, service sizes based on your flow for your meters. We have some base rates where you pay, 15 units if you use it or don't use it. And so all that's on the table as we look through this new analysis. And ultimately, just to be clear, this really, with all of these factors, with the rate study, it really sets the basis for what the city's needs are, what the utilities' needs are, so that should there need to be a discussion to raise rates in the future, then there's a firm basis that's analyzed as to where we're at and what we need to provide a basis as to what the justification is to what the rate should be increased to, or at least consideration for the city council of what it could be raised up to. And so, again, why is it needed now? There's a 5-year cap on how far out you could, when you do a Prop 218 vote in the future. The last one was done in 2016. That set the maximums where this council, in past, we've stayed within that cap for the last 8 years. But with that, the rates will be maxed out in 23, 24. So where that runs into problems is just dealing with inflation, your power costs, your utility costs. If you're not adjusting your rates, you don't have that option to adjust them anymore without going through the Prop 218 process. So again, significant funding, operational infrastructure needs have risen. And we're not able to even really change the structure. If we want to get into the drought dynamics and change the structure of the base rate, really that goes through a Prop 218 process and how those rates are set up for that. And so that's what this will initiate that study to look into. So what staff has done is they've developed a proposal, a request for proposal. It was went out in the fall of last year. It was issued in October and closed in November. And then we had internal reviewers from finance, utilities, engineering to really take a hard look in that, because there's going to be a lot of time put into that, and we want a strong team that deals with this and knows what they're doing. And so where we landed was with a company called Black & Veatch. They're an industry leader, to be blunt. You see their name and their resume speaks for itself as far as just their experience with utilities our size and really understanding the scope. We had 4 consultants propose with that. 2 of them were close, but really with the experience between the first, Black & Veatch, and number 2 is understanding the scope. It was considerably different understanding, I believe, of the in-depth of what we need to do to get into the scope. And so where the team landed was to recommend Black & Veatch Management Company. So some of the items that are required as part of the task are do analysis, really build that model, rates and fees. We're going to do in-depth look at the water, wastewater, implementation, adoption, and then there'll be drafts, and then there's also cost allocations for town hall meetings, for the community outreach as we get to get input about this and as we move through it. And we're expecting it to take about 1.5 to 2 years. Contract. It's a time and material contract, and so with the time and material contract, it's an hourly rate. But what they've done is they've proposed their hours for these different various items to get through there. And so with that, with a contingency factor in there, we're at $191,000. It's not cheap by any means, but it's within, it's where the industry is at for that. And there's current operational budgets to utilize operational budgets from this year to utilize for the contract. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, go into depth, and I recommend we adopt a resolution awarding the utilities rate study 2024 to Black & Veatch, as stated in the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? Any comments from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for comments. Yeah.
We have a pretty intense schedule, so we're talking about a kickoff here, maybe get the contracts going and within this month to start. And then it takes about 1.5 years when you really lay out the timeline for the public meetings, the potential Prop 218s, and then that come into place, and then just putting the information together. So we're hoping by the end of this year, so I guess, winter, late fall, that we'll have the study. And then it gets into, how the reviewing it and some consideration from staff as far as some of those policy decisions on what we need to do to move forward.
Through the mayor, thank you. I think several of us have always spoken of the fact that the major reason we're up here is for roads, water, sewer, and public safety. And though this seems like a lot of money, it sets the course for us to actually validate, what we're doing and how much we're charging for it. So I am in support, especially given the company that you have selected to perform the study. I have good confidence in them. Thank you.
I'll keep it short and sweet. Thank you for all your work in putting this together. So.
I like being able to take a shower and flush my toilet, so.
And just to make sure, because it's clear, because really this is setting the stage to analyze everything, but we know costs are going up. But this really will give information to the council. So then, besides determining where those rates could be, but there's still flexibility. There's maximums, potential maximums, and then how the council wants to handle actual rate fees. So there will be plenty of discussions coming forward based on the numbers that we put together.
Through the mayor, just to piggyback, I was honestly, thank you for your work, but to your point and what Councilmember Baumgarten said, we have a fiduciary responsibility. We can't kick the can down the road, and this is what gets us through the state's program to really find out what the true need is. So, that's why this is, in my opinion, really a no-brainer. We've got to know what the true need is before we can come back and set the policies to figure out how we're going to address it and be good stewards and not just kick it down the road to councils in the future. So again, thank you.
Well said. Okay. Look for action from the council.
Through the mayor. Move to approve, we were just there. Move to adopt a resolution awarding utilities rate study 2024 to Black and VTech Management Consulting LLC of Los Angeles in the amount of $159,705 plus a contingency of $32K with the finding it's in the best interest of the city.
I have a motion from Councilmember Shaw. Do I have a second? I've got a second from Vice Mayor Harris. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Moody. On item number 16, we have a recusal.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm within I think it's AB 1234. I'm within 1,000 feet of this property where my residence, so I will be recusing myself.
Okay. Thank you. Business item number 16, consideration of general plan amendment. GPA 22-05, the appeal of Rezone 22-06, and categorical exemption under CEQA Guideline, Section 15301, Gorsi Medical Office Rezone. Once again, presented by Ben Moody.
Okay, so general plan amendment proposed general plan amendment 2205, an appeal of the rezone 2206. This is an appeal that's from a planning commission, past planning commission action regarding the Gorsi Medical Office rezone. So let me work through some of the project parcel background and the proposal, and then I'll get into the planning commission information here. So basically what we're talking about is at the northeast corner of Franklin and Gray Avenue. So it's 467 Gray Avenue. Assessor parcel number 52122-011. The parcel, it's somewhat larger parcel for, it's an older parcel. This subdivision's been here for many years. And so let's get it. Okay, so staff received a proposed project proposal to convert the site for a private medical practice. So Dr. Gorsi's here. I want to make sure I relay that, and she's available for any in-depth questions regarding the potential project. So internal medicine, with the letter, it's by appointment only. It's a renovation, not a demolition of the existing site. The residential aesthetic will remain. No more than 2 patients at a time, and no retail sale or pharmacy is proposed. And so that's the follow-up information from the Planning Commission that Dr. Gorsi has provided. And so, but in order to get there, in order to change the single-family residence into a medical office, we would have to change the land use. And so the project proposal came through as a general plan amendment and a rezone to support that change to staff. And so when staff looked at it, what that does is basically it changes this yellow, the single family in our general plan, and it would change it to pink, which is similar to the left there across the street. C1 neighborhood commercial is what the zoning would be. And so, and then this is similar for the zoning map. It would go from R1 to C1 to match it across. And so when staff reviewed it, we looked at it, and it really isn't, when staff looked at it, we looked at it with a lens that it's a large parcel. It's at the corner of 2 major arterials, and there's been a precedent for it to being a home occupied business, I think a tax service right now. And so they wanted to add to that business to basically also have a medical there. And so, and it's not really unusual for arterials to change from single family So properties along single family, we've seen those on Bridge Street, on major corridors, that over time, some of those single family homes that were built years ago, they turn into this neighborhood commercial where you see the realtor, the tax guy, or a small medical office. And so staff's feeling when they reviewed this project was that going to a C1 neighborhood commercial for that site would be consistent with the, it could be considered consistent with the neighborhood because it's that neighborhood commercial and then just the location with it. But after going through the Planning Commission, there was some concern. The public hearing was held, and there was concerns by the Planning Commission and from some of the residents about just what that might ultimately turn into in holding some of the original status of the neighborhood. So the history on it was the applicant filed the application for the general plan rezone in June. It was recommended to approval for the Planning Commission. In September, the Planning Commission conducted the public hearing on the matter, and after closing the public hearing and deliberating, no action was made, resulting in denial. And so the major concerns that came out of that meeting was there was concerns expressed by the commission that included compatibility with the existing residential neighborhood, vague proposal. There was some uncertainty regarding what it would ultimately turn into, or if it would be used for a medical office or what. There was traffic concerns for the neighborhood, how the parking would affect that east side of the neighborhood and the long-term effect of the rezone at this location. So with that, the Planning Commission took no action, which ultimately resulted in a denial. The applicant appealed to the Planning Commission's action is why, in accordance with the municipal code, as why we are here now. And so the appeal cited three key items. As talked, the traffic, parking, long-term effects. Where there was neighbors at the Planning Commission meeting that wanted to keep this area residential, with the long-term effects and that concerns that if there wasn't a clear project proposal, could the site ultimately be demolished and turned into some sort of larger commercial activity. And so that's really what stood out from that meeting. The applicant provided some additional information that I'm sure she'll be here to add to, that talked about all parking will be on site, and that the proposal is to use the existing building, not to demolish the building. And staff wants to make sure it's noted too that any sort of modifications to the site with a building or access would all have to go through the city's building permit processes and meet all of the city's standards. We wouldn't let them just add a new driveway or add parking lots that weren't in compliance with the code. There are no current plans to demo the existing home, is my understanding. There's proposal for new paint, siding, windows, landscaping, and fencing will be removed. There's been a lot of talk about a fence that was put up a few years back that it maybe causes some site issues to some of the neighbors, and so that's been talked about as a condition of should it be approved. If it's not approved and it is an issue, it would be a code enforcement action. Applicant describes it as a discrete private medical practice, and any changes, again, would require a permit. Through the analysis, the future conversion of the existing home to medical office requires a building permit, meets development standards, and consistent with the Yuba City Municipal Code. That would include everything, including building height, setbacks, lighting, landscape, parking, signage, trash enclosures. And then with this, we have to analyze it for CEQA, and we determined that it fell within the CEQA exemption guidelines 15301. It was negligible expansion of an existing facility. And so with that, really where that puts the decision tonight is that we've seen projects in the past where over time, where they have an arterial roadway, you see this commercial change in neighborhood over time. But with that, the Planning Commission, based on hearing the feedback from the neighborhood and not having all the answers, they recommended denial because of the wanting to keep that neighborhood. And so, but with the appeal, it comes to the council tonight. And so staff will need direction as far as to return with a notice of denial, a resolution of denial, or a resolution of approval. And with that, the applicants here could provide additional information regarding the proposed project. Staff's here to answer any questions. And in order to move forward, we recommend A and B. So to conduct a public hearing and then provide direction to staff.
So is the individual going to speak before the public hearing or after?
My understanding, you can have it either way.
Okay. Would you like to step up to the podium then? Sure. Okay.
Dr. Gorsi, so the original plan that I had asked to propose was to convert an existing residential, residential property into commercial. So I can go ahead and start my medical practice. I am internal medicine trained, and there will be no cutting, no surgical, nothing of that sort. And like Ben had mentioned, I do plan to remain pretty discreet because I have to keep everybody's privacy in mind. And then I know, this young man, I know he did bring up just, I guess, the aesthetics of the property and like how things have not been updated. That does plan to change, and I do plan to follow code. And the fence itself, just so it's easier for folks to pull onto the property from Franklin as well as Gray, it's going to be removed in its entirety. So that's not even going to be an issue. But I just need, everybody's blessings to make sure I can go ahead. This is a long-term project. I do plan to work here because this is where I was born and raised. I'm in Illinois right now. So, but I do want to make a home base, and this is my future plan, and to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need to do the,
I've got a question.
okay, I'm sorry. Vice Mayor has a question.
Dr. Gorsi, you mentioned that you were internal medicine trained. Okay, are you going to be practicing internal medicine here, or is there some other approach you're taking to medicine?
Yes, so it'll be internal medicine, maybe a little bit of addiction medicine as well, like Suboxone. But like I said, it's very discreet. It's all outpatient practice. No pharmacy, no sort of disposal of any medications or nothing commercial of that sort.
Nothing commercial. So what do you mean by discreet? You have an office on the corner. How are you going to make it more discreet than any other office?
It's just going to say my practice name. And what else? Patient privacy, like you mentioned, it's just, it's by appointment. That's how things are done. It's not like an urgent care where people would, it's like you can get a busload of people or, so it's nothing like that. I would also take in consideration just the privacy and everything of the neighbors as well, just because of all the traffic and everything that could potentially come in. But I guess when it comes to discreet, it's not like it's a public entity like an ER or an urgent care or like a birthing center or anything like that.
Are you practicing, did you say Illinois?
Yeah, I practice.
You're practicing there now?
Yes, I've been.
Internal medicine or for addiction?
So internal medicine, I'm also a physician for a couple of the jails out there, so I do addiction as far as, I do some of that as well. And then I do hospital as well, so I do a lot of admitting ER work and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Council, any more questions?
For Ben.
Mine's more of a question, and I probably should have asked this early on general plan amendments. We're limited to so many per year, correct?
That's correct. There's no more than 4 per year.
Okay, so we've already had one, right? Don't we try to bundle these?
So there's definitely been internal staff discussion as far as bundling it. And so there will be one with, I believe, Nestry Park, right? Or Spirit Drive. And so we've talked about this one with the resolution, yay or nay, would be bundled with a future one that we have coming.
Okay, thank you.
I did have a question. It was mentioned there's currently a tax business there right now?
So right now it's being used by my mom. It's being used as like a tax
Okay.
travel agency, so.
Okay. And how long has she owned the property or been there?
So I purchased the property in late 2018, in December of 2018, so she's been operating since then.
I do have one more question. Can you put up the traffic and because that seems like that's a significant change.
So I just want to highlight that this is a map provided by the applicant, and so there's no driveway proposed or would be approved coming off Franklin Road. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now it doesn't have that circulation around the property.
Yeah.
And so it's coming, is it basically one in, one out type of a situation? Is that?
That's my understanding with the limited number of clients that would be there. I think there's talk about parking in the rear, but
Parking in the rear as the fence, like I mentioned, it'll be removed in its entirety, and you can actually circle the property.
and circle around and then come out back onto Gray.
Okay, thank you.
But we haven't seen any plans or got into that, but there would definitely be.
And they would have to be conforming.
Correct.
So there's no driveway around the building now?
There is a driveway that heads into a garage up into that left upper hand corner. And then the rest of it right now is grass, so that would all be land or asphalt.
That brings, I'm trying to think about the neighbors on that, because that's part of that slippery slope they're talking about with cars driving suddenly back there and parking back there and whatnot. While I have the microphone, can I have a question for Ben here? Ben, did the planning commission elaborate on their comment that the vagueness, the problem with the vagueness of the proposal? What was vague that we can maybe clarify right now?
You know, at the time, I think it wasn't a clear statement, regarding what internal medicine is exactly. And so I think, there was some talk where, could the site be turned into a neighborhood commercial? Could it be, with this zoning, it really opens the door that it's a permanent change that if Dr. Gorsi moves on, that site's zoned. And so, yes, it could turn into something else that falls in with that zoning and land use, which could be a small market or some sort of other item that's allowed in the C1 neighborhood commercial zoning. And so I think there was some vagueness as far as when the practice would open, the limits of the practice, and just for some assurity as to what were they getting? Was it going to be knocked down and turned into a Dollar General, or was it going to be a medical office? And so after that meeting, Dr. Gorsi's provided some of the additional information, as regarding her intent. But that is definitely, we'll hear that this is a permanent change.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just through the mayor, Ben, with that directional traffic flow around the building, one of the concerns is the parking lot. What kind of lighting and stuff is going to have to be in there? Because everything's got to conform, so there'd be additional lighting and stuff that has to light that up as a commercial parking lot too, correct?
Absolutely. Should this change, they would come in with a building permit. And so with the building permit, one of the first things would be ADA compliance for that parking stall. How does it have ADA path of travel to and from that? And then it gets into, if you're using an existing residence, what do we have to convert? And so, because you have old standards, non-compliant commercial standards, and then how are we going to work through that? So there's definitely going to be some work in order to make this compliant with commercial standards. And usually there's some thresholds about what gets triggered and what as soon as you change the door and the window doesn't mean you necessarily have to bring the bathroom up to date. But when you start doing some of these improvements, they'll have to start figuring out how to do that. Regarding the parking, honestly, we'd have to. Parking lots are expensive. If we're only talking 2 clients, to me, it's really more of a hammerhead type approach probably, because we wouldn't want to get them out to Franklin. Why are we circling the building unless it's some sort of, emergency need? And so I think staff would take a real close eye as to, hey, and also for the developers and the project proposals benefit, because they're expensive. And so in order to pave that and make a big driveway, I don't know if that's real for two clients. And so we'd really probably look at ADA compliance. How big of a driveway do you really need to minimize that impact?
Okay, I'm not
So
sure.
that was a lot, but yes, as soon as you put the sidewalk in, we're looking at shading, we're looking at lights, landscaping, and kind of how that triggers it, and then trying how to blend it, because you have this existing building now you're trying to bring up to standard.
Right, and that gets more back to where my question was. It wasn't really about the parking lot and stuff like that, but once you put that in, I know in our complex and other complexes that are commercial, the lighting is on basically all night long, whether that's for safety or is that required by code. But that's really what we're looking at with, if it's a commercial lot, there's got to be commercial lighting there, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There can be stipulations. I think the way our code reads right now, it's supposed to be shielded. The lights only are to be so tall, and they're for light during dark hours of business. And so a lot of times they just get left on. But there are some options that you can stipulate, and that might be something with this project through the overlay zone. You could call that out as a condition that the lights there aren't or the lights are only on from 8 to 5, or some sort of business hours. I guess that's where the lights get tricky, but they're supposed to be shielded. They're only supposed to be so tall. And with this project, staff has put an overlay zone, this combining district, because we know there's a back fence wall that commercial zone's supposed to have a wall. And so it's really a project killer to say at day one, you're going to have to put that wall in there for $100-something thousand. And so there was some timing thresholds we put in there. And so I would say regarding lights, that is a potential. You could put a restriction on the time of use if we wanted to.
Through the mayor, I guess what the concern I have, again, trying to lean towards being business friendly and getting this going, but at the same time, having some familiarity with plan review through a previous life, this all I see conceptual, and then I wonder, okay, now we've rezoned it to C1, and that concept might not be what you end up or what we end up seeing. Is there a way to get something more definitive in front of us if we're going to make this zone change?
Not really without the applicant investing some serious funds into it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't distrust you, but I've been around long enough to see things come forward and then they flip.
And that's a reality, because there's real money to those costs that a lot of times people don't realize that when you go to a commercial, all of a sudden you got $300,000 in infrastructure costs to get that parking lot, those lights in place, the zone.
We're not here to try to add anything
Yeah.
to anybody's project, but at the same time,
Yeah. And that is definitely a possibility.
so there isn't anything that you or staff know of that would allow us to kind of pin this down a little bit more without driving a cost of this thing more than I'm sure what they've already done in concept.
Through the mayor, if I may, Ben, if that's okay with you.
Please, yeah.
There is another potential legal option. There is a zoning overlay district that's associated with this particular piece of property. I believe it's the X28. Currently, that has certain requirements, such as get rid of the non-conforming wood fence, put up a masonry wall, these sorts of things. In theory, you could use the X28 to limit this to medical facilities or medical-related facilities. However, if you did that as part of the rezone, it would have to go back to the Planning Commission for recommendation, because that condition was not originally on there. And they would have 40 days to make that recommendation, then come back to the city council.
How would you like to respond to that?
So I had a feeling this would come up. So, in speaking with the engineer that, I've reached out to, and they're willing to work with me, they did bring up that I would need certain clearances, like, the masonry wall and having this much clearance of the driveway, and then, the ADA compliance and all of that. So I've I've hashed all that out with them. But their first challenge was get that rezoning, get it, official that you can open your medical business. And, it sounds like he made it sound like it was definitely manageable. So.
Is there any further questions?
I'm waiting to see if they've got something. I don't have any right now.
I was just looking to confirm, the way we worded that overlay, the trigger with the wall would be if it was anything in changing above a higher intensity than the medical office. But that is definitely an option, but it wouldn't have detailed plans. It would just be restricting it for a certain type of use.
Any further questions? Okay. The public hearing for consideration of General Plan Amendment GPA 22-05, the appeal of Rezone RZ 22-06, and a categorical exemption of CEQA Guideline Section 15301, Gorsi Medical Office Rezone is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment and state your name and address for the record. I've got 3 speaker cards, and the first one is from Andrew Fisher.
My name's Andrew Fisher. I reside at 1083 Franklin, just 2 doors down from this proposed site. I'm 3rd generation there. My family's owned the house since like 58. And so I appreciate the idea of, bringing medical offices, whatever, to the city. But my issue is the rezoning. You're taking a completely residential block, and then you're introducing commercial aspects to it that honestly shouldn't be there on the block. I understand main arteries, whatnot. You look at the blocks to the west of it, how they look with commercial sites. This block right here of Franklin is probably the best looking block up and down Franklin Avenue and Franklin Road. The previous meeting, the planning committee had also made comments about Yuba City has an excess of commercial properties available, but they don't have an excess of residential properties. And so that had been stated also as one of their concerns. And also was stated that, because one of my other concerns was, once this goes commercial, what can it turn into? And what was stated last time was, the worst it could become would be like a Dollar General. I'm sorry, I don't want a Dollar General 2 doors from me on my residential block. And so another issue I have is, so we're catty-cornered from a preschool, we're down the road from the high school, and then up Gray Avenue we have the other school. And she stated that the applicant had stated that a Suboxone clinic. Now I'm not getting on people that want to clean up their lives and everything, but I know what Suboxone is used for and what drugs it's used for getting over. Do we want to introduce that into a residential area? That's basically all I have. There's plenty of other areas where a medical office could go and do really good for this community. I don't know that a residential block is that place. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another speaker card from Mr. John Buckland.
Thank you, Mayor Kirchner, council members. One of the comments made by Dr. Gorsi was the engineer said the first thing you need to do is get a rezoning without any other caveat. And then we can work through the rest of the issues. I don't see that as even a viable way for an engineer to talk. That's just getting the horse out of the barn and not controlling it. So that's the first thing. Zoning restrictions are paramount to our neighborhoods, security, and protecting our neighborhoods and the individual property rights are the most important thing. Established zoning of an area takes precedence over use, especially non-conforming use. This is a neighborhood. This is a good neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that has built itself back up from years. It started to fall into somewhat of disrepair. Gray Avenue, some of the houses along Gray Avenue in that immediate area have stepped up and improved their properties. The proposal by Dr. Gorsi is adverse to the Planning Commission's recommendation. That's your Planning Commission. This is a residential neighborhood. External traffic will exceed the residential use. I don't care how well we try to protect a parking lot in Yuba City, there will be squatters on it. There will be people showing up that are homeless. They will set up camp, and they will create problems. Trust me. 901 Spiva Avenue is your model for just that. The business office that's currently there is a tax office. Is there even a business license for that? Did they get any type of exemption? It's not a residence, it's a business office. It's being used for commercial purposes currently. That's the bottom line. It's in violation currently. The site's within 477 feet of Yuba City High School. Think about the clientele. Dr. Gorsi's not being really clear. She operates a natural pain clinic, natural medicine pain clinic. They do have a website that's out of Arizona.
I don't work for, what do you have?
Okay, your website shows an address in Arizona.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay?
Through the mayor, if I could just ask you to remind the public to direct the comments to you instead of other members, I would appreciate that.
Misinformation.
Because we want to allow people the opportunity to speak.
I didn't direct a question,
I don't do holistic medicine.
okay? The site is within 276 feet of family-owned property. The Planning Commission rejected this proposal. I would ask you to take your time, consider your planning commissioners, and reject any use beyond residential use for that property.
Thank you, Mr. Buckland.
Thank you very much.
We have another speaker card from Lauren Halliburton.
I live 180 feet away from the property at 467 Gray Avenue. I live on McCollum. This property has been used exclusively as an office, as was mentioned, for quite some time. I have it dating back to at least December of 2019. Again, I don't know if a home use permit was put in, but it's definitely not being used as a residence. If you look online, Gorsi Physicians Group was established as an LLC at that address in August of 2020. So I don't know how long that, or if a practice has been being run out of that house, but it was established in 2020. This is all online. And so the current code violations are somewhat concerning because they've been that way since Dr. Gorsi has owned the property, and they haven't been fixed. So my question is, the fence is in violation of code, the usage of it is in violation of code. So once this is all put through, how many things are going to be snuck by after this? Part of my concerns too, as I mentioned, is the proximity to the high school. We already deal with a lot of traffic from the high school. We deal with the lights, the noise. We don't need one more thing in our neighborhood to bring in more cars, more people, more lights. The proximity to the residences, the proximity to the intersection, lot size was mentioned. All of our lots on that street are big. We have big lots. That's why we bought there. So I don't think that means that we should just change something to a medical facility just because it's on a big lot. The question about the brick wall, I absolutely think that's imperative. If this is changed and becomes a medical facility and you open up the driveway around that property, that leaves access when someone's not at that facility to people going behind that house, into dark spaces, into trash cans, into whatever's back there, and a wood fence isn't gonna stop them from going over it or through it. So I think that's imperative if this does pass. I think that this also leaves way to setting a precedency for other people to do the same thing, other doctors to say, hey, I'm gonna buy a house and turn it into a medical facility. I don't think that's something that we need to start. And my question is has anyone from the city contacted Dr. Gorsi to maybe help suggest other areas she could provide her services or open a clinic? Because right now, there are 9 different buildings of all different square footages in Yuba City that could be used as a medical office, that have been used by Adventist, that have been used by Fremont Rideout, that are available right now. We don't have to make changes. We don't have to bring commercial properties into our neighborhoods. Probably be cheaper. And she has no valid website. So as far as her specialty, the taxonomy codes that are used are really vague. To bring in the Suboxone and a detox clinic, that's not something I want in my neighborhood. Someone mentioned 2 patients at a time, but how many patients is that a day? Are they 15 minutes apart? How many people are coming in and out every single day? Let's see. My last question is, how many of you would be okay with this in your neighborhood? Pasquale excused himself. He hasn't come to talk to any of us. Would you be okay with this a couple hundred feet from your house? I'm not. So I really hope that you guys uphold the Planning Commission's decision on this one. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments from the public on this issue? Any further comments on the public? Yeah.
Oh, hey there. Just clearance, I guess, regarding.
You do, under this particular circumstance, Mayor, have the option to open it up for her so that she can respond to those questions.
Yes, okay. So can you please respond to those questions? Thank you.
I don't practice holistic medicine or pain medicine. I don't know where this information came from. I mean, I do work in the ER in the hospital. I mean, I practice internal medicine. I'm a board certified internal medicine doctor. So I don't know where this information is coming from. Number 2, regarding squatters, there are squatters everywhere. They're on private property, they're on public property. I think that's up to the city and their, law service. That's up to them to fix. I can't prevent if somebody is going to use my personal property as a squatting destination or whatnot. And then a detox center, like I mentioned, this is not going to be a revolving door. There is no birthing center. There is nothing of that sort that would bring that sort of traffic in. A detox center is a totally different type of setting. It has a higher, threshold for certain guidelines and things that I have to use. It's considered more emergent because there's intake at all times of the day. You need a 24-hour person to intake patients that come into detox. That's not me. I am 9 to 5, 8 to 5. So I think I know everybody's thinking that this is like a vague or an unclear picture. And I get the concerns regarding the high school and everything else and folks being worried about, the potential drug activity or whatever. But I think all of California is dealing with that right now. The opioid crisis, I'm sure you guys have heard of it. They just don't have enough resources. They don't. I'm only going to be given a prescription. Evaluating them, prescription, they're out the door, they go to their pharmacy, it's up to them if they want to fill it or not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the public on this item? Any further public comments?
I would just add for input that the current business has owner-occupied permit with the city for the tax business. With that, the homeowner occupied permit doesn't allow signage. Where a lot of this started up is there was discussions on how to begin advertising or doing that, or through the medical offices, because it was a higher intensity than what the owner occupied permit would allow.
All right, thank you.
Through the mayor, Mr. Moody, as regards your feedback from the Planning Commission, a lot has been said about their denial. Earlier on in your presentation, it seemed like it was more because there was unanswered questions was the reason for denial. Can you help me better understand where the Planning Commission landed on this?
You know, it wasn't, there was no recommendation made. So it died from, so it wasn't a recommendation to deny. It was just nobody made an action to approve it. And this is really just from the context of the conversation and some follow-up questions. It was really, they were honing in with compatibility with the neighborhood. They weren't ready to make that change for this location, to make it, you know, even though they've seen this happen over time on different arterials, that the arguments from the residents was that the conversation was it looked like they weren't ready to make this change in use for that neighborhood. And there was just concerns on what the medical practice entailed and what that would, you know, how that would fit in the neighborhood.
I guess the final comment then I would have then, are we at that point, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I need to close, yeah.
Do that.
So, let's go ahead and one last time, I'm going to ask the public for comments on this item. Seeing none, I am now closing the public hearing and bringing the matter back to council.
It seems to me the big issue here is whether, you know, whether or not this type of use should be permitted at this particular location. And it seems to me that there are ways to limit, you know, the belief or the possibility, I should say, or possibility of something other than what is being proposed to us. I'd like us to be able to consider, if we move ahead with doing anything, something that limits what could go there on that particular piece of property. I don't know whether the rest of the council's for it or not, but I'm not going to be for it given what it could be right now. And again, it's nothing personal against you, Dr. Gorsi. It's just, it's too open for me. Absolutely. You know, if something happens, all of a sudden we've got this C1 designation on the property and, you know, maybe you sell it. You know, there's all kinds of opportunities or possibilities there. So anyway, I share that with my colleagues.
You're the mayor. Thank you for all the comments tonight, and Dr. Gorsi, thank you for being here. I went back and listened to the Planning Commission's meeting, which was clear back in September, I believe it was, Mr. Moody. And to answer a few more of your questions, they had a lot of the same questions that I did. And once you get into the type of business, it's like they were prior to that, because you go back to the traffic model and yeah, the idea is to flow in off of Franklin and flow out onto Gray, and then there's a transit stop right there. But we don't have the barriers to prevent cars from doing it. So you know they're going to be turning off of Franklin going east and west, and they're going to come out on Gray and go north and south. And we have a huge congested area there already as far as traffic. So that was one of their big main concerns. But as Councilmember Baumgarten, what you said, it's the what down the line and what precedents are we setting with moving this. We have boundaries in our general plan that set aside what should be residential, what should be commercial. And I forgot who asked the question, but yeah, I don't want a Dollar General next to me in my neighborhood. And I believe that was, yeah, saying it was you. Yeah, and the people in that neighborhood knew what was on the other side of Gray or what was developed there 20, 30, 50 years ago versus the nice neighborhood that backs up to our school. So it's really about that precedent of, do we amend our general plan with these overlays and take away what the general plan had intended is where I start falling. And there is too many questions. Dr. Gorsi, we need your assistance here in the city, but as it was pointed out, there is lots of commercial real estate around as well. So I do hope that you will take a look and come home and be part of our community. But at the end of the day, I have to think of the people that's been there. I think you said it's how many years, sir? Since 65. Knew that just across the intersection, there's more commercial because that's an old gas station there and such, but it is homes up in that area. And to me, it gets back to, I think there's certain boundaries that we have to adhere to and follow, and we've got to do what's right. And you pointed out, CEQA, you check all the boxes, but sometimes it's beyond doing what's right and really having the understanding and that wisdom to know what the community really needs and what's needed for the neighborhood. So for me, it doesn't jump that bar for, changing the general plan because there's too many concerns about traffic, business that could particularly be there. And actually in the Planning Commission, that was exactly what you said. Yeah, in 10 years, it could be, you could sell it, it could be a Dollar General. Once we've changed it, it's C1. There's not this C1, but it could only be this. It's kind of an open-ended C1. And then back to what I was asking about the lighting. John, I think you pointed it out with the transits and stuff coming through. The reason commercial properties keep their lights on at night is to try to keep the vagrants away because they do not like the lights. And it's not the city's sole responsibility to take care of the homeless and the vagrant. You have rights as the property owner, and if they're on your property, we can't go on it unless you invite us on that property. So there is that responsibility. But even if you put a brick wall up, you're going to have to keep it lit, and you're going to be sitting there with what impact is that going to have to the neighborhood? So there's a ton of questions that go on, and I just don't think it, in my opinion, it raises to the bar of changing the general plan. So that is my thoughts, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw. Any further comments from council?
I'll just, real brief. I concur with Councilmember Shaw that it just isn't quite rise to that level. Everything that the Planning Commission, when I was reading through this, everything that they picked up on, I agree with. What I've heard today from 3 different people, I agree with, although apparently some of it's debatable. However, it's that slippery slope. Once we crack that seal and start invading into that block like that, and there are many, many other places to go would be more appropriate. So for that reason, I would encourage you to maybe perhaps consider a Plan B, in my opinion. It's just, there's so many concerns that we've all seen it before. We've all heard of that happening before. And now, in this case, we're in the position to do something about it. And I would hate for something to embark on those unknowns like that. I think it'd be irresponsible for us, and us irresponsible for these neighbors and folks to move forward.
Thank you for that, Vice Mayor. I'm going to have to concur with my colleagues up here. You have a council before you that the motto is Yuba City open for business. I love going to ribbon cuttings, and I hope someday to go to your ribbon cutting. But when we work hard to make sure the right people are on our individuals are on our planning commission, and they tell us one thing, I think we need to listen to them, and as well as the neighbors in this case. So with that, do we have to go with action on this?
Through the mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
The action that you'll be taking tonight is to direct staff to come back with a final resolution for final adoption. And I'm not very good at counting, but I count at least 4 noses here, even though Councilmember Pasquale is officially required to recuse himself under the law. And you've got more than 3 people. So my recommendation is, as the council is inclined to deny this, is to just say a motion to direct staff to come back with a resolution of denial. Now, we're going to need findings to put in that resolution of denial, and based on what I've heard tonight, I've heard findings. If you disagree with any of these findings, let me know. If not, we're going to be putting them in the resolution as the basis for the reason for denial. And those include the residential characteristics of the neighborhood, that it's all, it's a neighborhood area. The lack of housing within the area and as compared to commercial. In other words, we want more housing versus commercial. There are other locations to put commercial. That this putting commercial here could address security, lighting, vagrancy, and other sort of issues, given its close proximity not only to the neighborhood, but to the schools and everything else like that. And let me see if I saw anything else. Ben, did you think of anything else?
Just general compatibility with the neighborhood. And so we'll come back. I see the nods that we'll come back with a resolution.
So if the council's fine with that, just a motion to direct staff to come back with a resolution consistent with what Ben and I said.
Okay, so I'm going to ask council to make that motion.
Okay, the motion is then off the floor of whoever wants to make the first is motion to direct staff to return with a resolution for final adoption by the city council denying the project based on the findings that have been briefly stated in the record. I made it too formal. Tell us to come back, we'll fix it, and it'll be denial.
I'll make the motion that we move forward with a recommendation for denial of this project based upon all the items identified this evening.
So I have a motion from Councilmember Shaw. Do I have a second? I've got a second from the Vice Mayor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Can someone go get Councilman Pasquale? Okay. Okay, thank you. Item 17, future agenda items. This is the opportunity to discuss with the city manager about items that came up in the meeting this evening that you would like to have brought back to council at a later date. Do we have any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Reports and communications. The following reports and communication items are provided for the council's information. No action will be taken on these items under this section unless council agrees to include it on a subsequent agenda. Item 18, City Manager's Report. Ms. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So on January 26th, we had a full-day council workshop in which we discussed a variety of items. And council provided some feedback related to fireworks, sideshows, and then we have some follow-up to do related to RV and boat storage, mobile vendors, and then sidewalks and trees. So we'll be following up with the items that were discussed there. Next Wednesday, February 15th, Ashley just left, but our You Can with Yuba City, she has a shop talk for professional services at Dancing Tomato at noon. So we invite individuals that provide professional services, or if you just want to come and learn more about You Can with Yuba City, to come have lunch with us. And then at the next council meeting on February 21st, Race Communications, which is installing broadband infrastructure throughout the city, is going to come and do a presentation about the scope of their project, their process to notify property owners, and then also the process to submit a complaint. As they have started in the northwestern portion of the city, it has created a lot of questions amongst property owners about what is a public utility easement, why are people putting boxes in my front yard, I'm not interested in their service. How can they put the box in my front yard? And so we're hoping that council will be able to get questions that they have answered, as some of you are receiving complaints from property owners. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Number 19, City Council reports. We're going to start off this evening with Councilmember Baumgarten.
Thank you, sir. So on the 23rd of January, participated in the point in time count, where this was an effort that happens once a year nationally, as I understand it, to help quantify those folks who have spent the previous evening unsheltered. And from that count, which is, I believe, managed or at least coordinated through our homeless consortium, we will eventually get a report about what that number is, and that number is the preliminary data that is used, for instance, for grants and other means of trying to help those folks. So it was important to participate in that. I know Vice Mayor Harris also participated. It was interesting, and I will share this one just because I think it's a great misconception at times, is the area that I was assigned to with another citizen volunteer, a person, people always say, hey, all these people can't possibly be from Yuba City. Every one of the folks that I interviewed was from Yuba City and had something happen in their life that drove them to the street. So while there may be imports, I didn't find any that night. These are unfortunately homegrown folks who are finding food insecurity and homelessness, and they from 10 years old to probably 70 or 80 years old were the group that I came in contact with. So kudos to those that participated in that. I'm eagerly awaiting. That sounds bad. I wish it was zero, but at least quantifying what we have, then we have an opportunity to try to do things and make things better for those who want a hand up. We did have the strategic planning meeting. I encourage anybody who has any interest in the city. We do this annually. This is where the council and our department heads and middle managers get together. We invite the public to come. Thank you for coming, Heather. It's an opportunity to kind of map out where we're going for the next year, priorities in advance of the development of the budget, which I believe staff is underway doing at this particular point in time. I had the opportunity to participate with the Beale Military Liaison Committee with a visit. There was about 19 of us that went to Nellis Air Force Base and to Creech Air Force Base. This was a representative group of both Yuba County supervisors, Sutter County supervisors, Marysville City Council, and then other civic leaders. And the purpose of this is to, these bases all interact and interrelate with Beale. And what you are struck with when you go, you get to kind of go behind the curtain is the very sophisticated things that the Air Force is now doing to support our safety and the importance of Beale in that mission. A lot of us who've been around here for a long time recognize Beale for the fact that there was SR-71s flying around or U-2s flying around. That base is affectionately being transformed into a point-and-click base. That doesn't mean that the U-2s, the T-38s aren't going to be flying around, but a lot of these missions now are very technologically advanced. Creech is where they fly the drones across the world. Nellis is where they scrambled F-22s to intercept the balloon when it was over Montana. A lot of this stuff is really important. And I will share a couple things with you, and this is not meant to be partisan by any means, especially on the night of the State of the Union. But I had an opportunity to talk to the general who operates Nellis Air Force Base. And I asked him what kept him awake at night. And he says, China. I asked Colonel Church when I saw him a couple weeks back at Beale Air Force Base, what keeps him up awake at night? China. And I asked the lieutenant colonel at Creech Air Force Base, which again, these are the best of the best flying drone attacks and all these other things. What keeps you up at night? China. So when you hear about these things and you correlate those with the mission that's going on out at Beale, then it's vitally important for us as a community to support those folks. They are guarding our back, they're guarding our front, they're guarding our side, and they're guarding all of us around there. So it was a great opportunity to really recognize and appreciate the job that our military is doing night and day, 365, 24/7. And And when you see some of those folks in our community, I encourage you to give them a very heartfelt thanks, because the missions they have right now, I think, are ramping up. Participating still with Project Home Key, and I know that we have this senior housing project on the north side of the old of the Moose Lodge. That's great. I remember hearing a comment that, you know, you need to do more. Well, I know my good friend Tony Curlin and John here are both on the senior commission. It's a big issue for us is to do senior housing. Tony and I are in the Regional Housing Authority, and what do we have, Tony? 250 units in some state of planning for senior housing as well. So I will report to you, council, we are engaged. We are doing things. We do have things not necessarily shovel ready yet, but there are plans in the can, so to speak, and we're just awaiting approval of those. I think that's it. That's enough. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Pasquale.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended my SASA meeting on the 30th of January. We elected a chair and vice chair. I was really impressed that they're vigorously going to try to get the funds together to build a barn, because they're seeing a mission more and more of having large animals come into them. And I thought that, and I guess was being spearheaded by the foundation. So I was very interested in that, and I think the community should get behind that as well, and do some fundraising and get it up. I think that'd be a great opportunity for the community. Went to the Rotary Crab Feed. It was a sellout, I believe. And it's great to see the community come together, because I know the Rotary does so many great things for this community. They always, money flows, and that's a great thing. On a more sad note, I don't know what the procedure is or whatever, but we lost Gary Tyndall. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Gary Tyndall. He's a longtime sheriff in Yuba County. His family, his wife, and all of them are the Chessinis out in the Meridian area. He was a great man. He was great for this community. And I was wondering if we could send any kind of condolence letter from the council to the family. He's going to leave a big void in our community. And with that, I will close my comments.
Okay. Thank you for that, sir. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we last met, I was able to attend First Baptist Church's 100th anniversary celebration as they first came to our community in 1923. Great event and great time there. Wish them all the great success. They have now gone through their merger, and they will no longer be First Baptist, but Legacy Baptist, which was kind of fitting after 100 years. So, transit meeting. If you haven't seen on social media thus far, any of the things, Mr. Martin is trying to retire. As I said, trying in June. 2 words, duct tape. We will keep him around. But no, we have flown the position, and that process has started. So the plan is, if we can locate a new executive director for Yuba Center Transit, then they would begin that transition, and he would retire on June 30 or shortly thereafter once there's a clean transition. The other thing is coming up next Thursday, open house, the 16th, 2 to 4, and then again at 5 to 7 at the Yuba Government Building to find out what transit's doing, some of the future things, the studies they're doing with the mode of traffic flow. Attended the EDC. The most significant thing out of that is come July, the EDC will be embarking with new software that will do everything that they currently do, plus embarking on this new software that basically has an AI component to it, that they track every one of us through our cell phones, through our GPSs on our cars. So as businesses are looking at our community, they can tell you exactly how many trips have been made to any one location, and the data is only going to be 3 days old. So that is coming from the EDC. Want to piggyback off of something that Councilmember Boomgarden said, and I'm glad you got to go on that trip. That was to look behind the veil. Behind the veil. I used to work behind about the third veil out at Beale, and what Beale does is very, very important. And the reason that the people don't worry about what's going on in the world, that's because our military does, and they know what's going on. The reason people didn't worry about North Korea for a long time is because they didn't know what was going on in North Korea. Just be honest with you, if you knew, and I've been out 30 years, but just the stuff I knew 30 years ago, it would keep you awake at night, what goes on in this world. So Beale is super important to this community, and we do have a large veteran population, but what they do goes right to the top. When I was in, every day I was talking with the Pentagon because of the stuff going on in the world. I would ask my colleagues, I've mentioned this to the city manager once before, it's kind of abstract, but I think the timing is fitting with what you just brought back from Nellis and the BLMLC and with what's going on in the world. We need to let Beale know that we appreciate them and they are important to us. So I would like for us somewhere in the near future, bring back a resolution that states that we are a community that stands behind our military. I know it's really symbolic, but I think we need to take the lead on that as one of the communities that back up to be able to let them know that we are here, we believe in what they do, and we're very thankful. And I would ask you guys to entertain that. So, Mr. Mayor, if you can work with the city manager, if you agree to that, I would love to see that somewhere in the near future. And with that, the only other thing is started the cap-to-cap meetings, which will be coming up at the end of April. Safety team met, and we'll have papers coming up here shortly that we'll be getting to both of our chiefs to get their direct input on that. So with that, I'm done.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor.
All right. Thank you. A lot have already been said. I did, like Mr. Boomgard mentioned, I did participate in the point-in-time count, which was actually quite interesting. I'd recommend it for anybody who has any interest in homeless or anything like that, because rather than seeing somebody walk down the street in the shopping cart or whatever, we're actually talking to them and asking them questions. We didn't have one person. They in the training, they forewarn you. If they tell you to take a hike, go ahead and do that, but not one person told us to do that. They were all friendly, they were all nice, they listen, they answer the questions honestly. They even willingly wore the little sticker that we have them wear to say that they've been counted, so they don't get double counted by another team. And it was nice and actually a little bit refreshing to be able to talk to those folks, because they are human beings, and there's a story behind each and every one of those faces, and it's important to experience that and see that. So hopefully we'll get some accurate information and be able to get proper resources for them. At CEQA, the meeting this month, or last month, was primarily ceremony in nature, and that we had a new chairman appointed, and a lot of outgoing, congratulations for the outgoing chairperson. I am on, we talked about the blueprint, which is basically our strategic plan. We're preparing that, finalizing that. I am appointed once again to the Land Use and Natural Resources Subcommittee. So I'll bring back some information on that when it's appropriate. Mayor and I conducted, as we did in the consent today, the Planning Commission and Parks and Recreation interviews, some very good applicants, which has made some tough decisions, but I think we made some good ones. I had the honor of going to the Yuba City Police Department Awards ceremony. Several employees were awarded for some very well-deserved recognition on some of the things they did, outright heroic in nature. So that was very good to be a part of that. So congratulations to all those folks. And then, as mentioned, we had our strategic planning meeting over at the Harvest Room. Would have been nice to have more of the public there. Heather, you always can be relied upon to be present and also contribute, which is appreciated. What? She always gets defensive immediately. But that's okay. Anyway, so I think it was productive. I think we did some good work. We did kind of run out of time. We have a little bit more to talk about, but I think everything that was said and learn and get everybody in the same room communicating and have a voice-to-voice instead of, Brown Act kind of interferes with some other stuff sometimes. So it was nice to do that. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Well, a lot of stuff's happened since the last time we were here. Excuse me. Attended the new Mayor's Academy with Council Member Pasquale down in Sacramento with the League of Nations. As mentioned before, transit. I'm also on the Transit Ad Hoc Committee to find the new director for that. Participated in a ribbon cutting at VRcade, which is a virtual reality business over on Walton. Interview planning commissions, also the Park and Recs. We had some excellent candidates. As was mentioned before, the special council workshop. What came out of that was revenue. And so stay tuned for that. That's the focus for this council right now. The State of the Chamber, I attended that. Coffee with a Cop, which is always fun. It was over at Steelhouse Coffee, where we get to talk to some of our city employees. I had a tentative planning meeting for the second annual parade. For those of you that don't know, there's a Sikh temple, which is on Hain Avenue, which is right across the street from the Moose Lodge. They're tentatively planning their second annual parade, and we're trying to get the county and the city together with them to get that a little bit better organized. The Moose Lodge meeting, that was the big one. The Vice Mayor and I intended for a proposed affordable housing unit next to them for senior housing. Very spirited discussion and always fun. That was the second of the second meeting, the community meeting that we had there, and it seemed like the one objection was that people understood that there's a huge demand for senior housing, but they thought it was too small. So I don't know if that's much of an argument, but what was brought up in that meeting was after the first meeting. After the first meeting, they actually had 3 people in the audience ask to get signed up for affordable housing. So that was something positive that came out of that. Attended my first cap-to-cap water meeting with the city manager to prepare for cap-to-cap, and I mentioned before the transit. Yesterday, I got the privilege of being invited by Supervisor Baines out to the Sikh temple in Terra Buena. Kind of at the last minute, they had a group of about 100 farmers coming through the area from Illinois, and they asked to get a tour of the temple, and so they were given that, and it was neat to meet folks with similar interests from the other part of the country. And lastly, I would like to close the meeting. This past week, we lost a former member of our city staff, and I'm just going to go ahead and read the announcement. Yuba City Police Department is saddened by the passing of our friend and coworker, Dulcie Ward. Dulcie was a 29-year member of the department. She started her career as a dispatcher/clerk in 1984, promoting to PSD 3 in 1990. She earned the rank of Communications Center Manager in 2005, where she served until her retirement in May of 2013. She passed away on Monday, January 30th, 2023. She will be missed. And with that, I'll close the meeting.